would like to sincerely thank the Isaac Regional Council, along with the Regional Arts Development Fund, for their support in bringing you this interview. The Regional Arts Development Fund is a partnership between the Queensland Government and Isaac Regional Council to support local arts and culture in regional Queensland. Zara's Day is a fundraising initiative of the Boshammer family, held in memory of their very special little girl, Zara Hilary Boshammer. Little Zara was born with Pallister Killian Syndrome, a rare chromosomal disease. In Zara's memory, her family created Zara's Day, which raises funds for the Royal Flying Doctor Service and the Steve Waugh Foundation, whose focus is to support families living with rare disease. Zara's family feel they now have a purpose to help make a positive difference in the lives of others affected by rare disease and life-limiting conditions. From tragedy and loss, the Boshammers have created a beautiful legacy for Zara, filled with hope, love and positivity. Their courage, commitment, strength and faith will inspire you. Many thanks to the Isaac Regional Council and the Queensland Government for bringing this very special story to you. Hello, Kate, and thank you so much for joining me. And I especially appreciate it because I know how busy you are at the moment organising everything with the Zara's Day raffle and the online auction, which is coming up soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly, for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you and share a little bit of our story and about Zara's Day. So I'm grateful to be here.
Oh, well, I feel very, very privileged that you're speaking to me. So, Kate, I was scrolling through all your beautiful Instagram pages and I found a beautiful little thing that you'd written. And I think it, to me, embodies, I think, what your family has been through over the past 18 months. So if it's okay, I wanted just to start by reading this out. So I should, I'm getting really old, I need my glasses. So Kate, this is from your page. It is a life-altering and soul-changing journey to have a child with a rare disease. As parents and as people, we really are changed forever, regardless of the length of time our child is with us. There is grief for what could have been. There is grief in the daily challenges. There is grief if we lose them. And then there is grief always. Yeah. But there is also joy, a deep awakening, and the blessings of surrender, perspective, gratitude, and empathy. And Kate, listening to your story and how you, at what you're doing, I just cannot believe the grace and courage and hope and faith and strength that you and your family have. It's just amazing, and I'm in awe of you. But anyway, let's talk about your beautiful little family. So you had Theo. He's 5 now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just turned 5.
Yeah. And he was the perfect little baby. And I guess, we get maybe lulled into a false sense of security when things go well, and then when they don't, it's a bit of a shock. So tell me about Zara and what happened with the pregnancy and...
Yeah, sure. Well, when Theo was about 2.5, we decided we'd like to have another baby, and as you mentioned, everything went really smoothly with him, and he was, born a very big, very healthy baby, and my transition into motherhood and breastfeeding him and his growth and development was, all on track, and it was a smooth and really joyous journey. And that was my introduction to motherhood, and that was my experience of what motherhood is or is for me. And then when we fell pregnant with our second baby, Zara, we had a few little indications in our pregnancy that prompted us to do further testing, which was all clear. there was one thing that we knew for sure when I was pregnant with Zara, and that was that she had bilateral talipes, so club feet, where her little feet are turned in. And I researched that a lot and found that it's one of the most common birth defects that babies can have, and very rarely is it connected with anything else. So in my experience, I looked through all of the Facebook support groups and saw all these beautiful little children who went through their process of casting and their operations and that journey to allow them to be as mobile as any other child. So that was a path that I had researched and prepared ourselves for. And based on the rest of our testing and our amnio being clear, we held, I guess we held on to faith that Zara would be okay and she would be able to have a happy and healthy and fulfilling life. So we proceeded with our pregnancy with a higher level of support, I suppose, in terms of having scans in Brisbane and going to the best places that we could. My pregnancy was really smooth, like I was healthy and she was growing really well, and I had the most beautiful birth with her. I guess the journey that we're on prompted me to discover hypnobirthing, actually, and I'm really grateful that I was able to go down that path. And Zara arrived a day before she was due, and I had her in an hour and a half at the hospital, and I didn't have any intervention, and she just had the most humbling and graceful journey to come earthside, and that was a beautiful experience, and it was really empowering.
Kate, I'm really interested to know what hypnobirthing is, because I hadn't heard of it until I heard you speak of it.
So hypnobirthing is a practice and a way of educating yourself and preparing your mind and your body for the most peaceful birth that you have in mind, I suppose. And for everyone that is different, and you are able to, I guess part of it is surrendering to the possibility that your birth may not go the way that you would ideally like it to go, but knowing and having faith that that will be okay and that's the best path to take. But for a lot of people, and for me, hypnobirthing meant having a really calm labour with as minimal medical intervention as possible. So I laboured at the house we were staying at in Toowoomba all day, and I just went about my day and was just gently aware of my surges and what was progressing along throughout the day. And we went to the hospital that night, and for me, I had a goal to avoid any like I suppose induction or pain relief, as it's called. But it teaches you that not to think about the intensity of birth as pain, but rather as intensity that is bringing your baby closer to you, and you're just working on your breathing and your visualization, and there's a number of different techniques that you can use. And we did a combination of in-person and Zoom education to prepare ourselves to hypnobirth. And it does involve the partner as well, and ensuring that they're there to support you and they understand your vision for the birth and you're both on the same page. And it's obviously important to share that with your obstetrician and midwives so that they can support you as best possible to achieve those things too. And it was amazing to do that. And I would absolutely recommend it to anyone who's interested in exploring other options for birth.
Mm. Oh. So Kate, how soon after did you realise that things were even not as good as what they had initially thought?
Well, Zara was born about 9:15 that night, and soon after she was born, they discovered that she also had a soft cleft palate inside her mouth, and we weren't able to see that on any scans. And for me at that time, that information didn't necessarily, mean anything or give me an answer to anything, but it was just something that they alerted it to me, and for that reason they took her to the special care nursery. And later that night, around midnight, the paediatrician came in and she called us down, and that's when she started asking us some questions. And I think it was quite clear to her that Zara had other things going on, I suppose, for a lack of a better way of saying it. And that's when we were sort of gently or gradually introduced to the idea that there might be something more at play here. But she didn't have any answers for us, and it was a long time until anyone did. So we stayed in Toowoomba. Well, I stayed in Toowoomba for 3 weeks while Zara was in special care nursery, and Justin would come back when he could and bring Theo when he could. But that first 3 weeks we worked on breastfeeding, and it was very difficult because of Zara's cleft. She wasn't able to get the suction that she needed to breastfeed effectively. So I would express a lot at the hospital and back at the house, and we'd supplement her with an NG tube down her nose to her tummy. And during that time, we found that she had a heart murmur as well. So we went to Brisbane a couple of times by ambulance to have a more detailed echo done on her heart. And that was, that was progressing in the right direction. But it was a very different experience to start, I guess, having a newborn in your life. And it was just so far removed from what the natural journey is when you have a new baby. And I know there's challenges with that, and the sleep deprivation, and, adjusting to feeding, or, every baby is different. But it just, when there's so much medicalisation involved, it becomes really tough to let that natural mothering journey, I suppose, take its natural course that it otherwise would have, because there's so much interaction from doctors and nurses and equipment and procedures, and it's that's a tough thing to struggle with. And I think even families who have babies who don't have a severe condition, they might be premature or be in the special care nursery for a little while, it definitely is a very different introduction to time earthside with your baby. But it's something that you just adjust to, and the nurses there are amazing, and they really led by example, showing me just the love and the care that they gave Zara. And they were right there with me around the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So
it must have been really tough having Justin having to go home, because I guess people in town, mostly they have their husbands with them by their side the whole time, but with Justin having to go home and you living remotely, that must have been an extra stress on both of you.
Yeah, it was. It becomes a lot about logistics and just, getting through day by day and trying to make it that he could be there as much as possible. But it was just at the beginning of COVID too, so they were starting to bring in more restrictions on how many people could be in the hospital. And Theo wasn't able to meet Zara until we left hospital when she was 3 weeks. So those things did make it a little bit harder. But I think when you're in that situation, you just do what you need to do, and try to keep supporting each other and keep getting through it, and keeping your eye on the light at the end of the tunnel, I suppose.
Kate, it's great that you were actually able to stay in Toowoomba and didn't have to go to Brisbane. And I hadn't considered that regional hospitals would have such great facilities to take to care and support those kids or babies that are born with problems. So that was a really big thing, I guess, for you two, not having to go to Brisbane.
Yeah, absolutely. And at our final scan in Brisbane, before I had Zara, it might have been a few weeks before, they confirmed, they said, we feel that you're safe and you're right to have this baby in Toowoomba. So that was really reassuring for us. And I've had both of my babies at St Vincent's in Toowoomba, and yeah, they're amazing. So we were able to get all the care that we needed for Zara there.
Yeah.
Until the next stage of her treatment, and that's when we spent a lot of time at the Queensland Children's Hospital in Brisbane.
Yeah. So, Kate, it must be incredibly hard to diagnose a child or a baby that has a rare disease, because I guess because it's rare, not many people know what would be wrong. So you'd need someone who perhaps had experience, or the doctors would have to find, do a lot of research, I suppose. So how long after Zara was born did you find out that she had a rare disease? And it's called Pallister Killian Syndrome, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So after Zara was born, our paediatrician in Toowoomba, who is an amazing lady, she suspected another condition called Noonan syndrome, and another couple of doctors further along the way, also suspected that. So I did a lot of research on that, and I joined a Facebook support group for parents, and I thought that was the path that we were going down, and that was a big realignment of expectations, I suppose, initially. But in a way, I suppose it was probably a good stepping stone for me, because Noonan syndrome isn't as severe as Pallister Killian syndrome. So I wasn't, I guess, getting the real diagnosis or prognosis up front. I suppose I started to learn a lot more about different other conditions and disability, and the way that these children are affected, and what their futures look like, and how we can support and care for them and help them to overcome their challenges. So I'm grateful that I did, as hard as it was to go down all of those different paths, and then only to be told something different, or have another specialist tell you that they think that that's not it. Well, it's turmoil emotionally to go through all of that, but I'm grateful that because of that I was able to learn a lot more and develop more empathy for all of the wide range of different conditions that do affect families and children. And so it wasn't until Zara was around 4 months old that we were able to receive a diagnosis. So when she was a little bit younger, we saw a geneticist in Brisbane, Professor David Coman, and he's an incredible man who works with a lot of children with rare disease and different conditions. And he has a way of allowing you to feel that everything will be okay. And I'm so grateful for that introduction to him. And at our initial appointment, he did tell us that he knows that it's not Noonan syndrome that Zara has, but he talked to us a lot about us, and he said, let's do a full exome genetic sequencing test on Zara, which would look as deeply as possible at what her diagnosis could be. So we went down that path, and it does take quite a while to get the results, and we did pay to expedite that to make it a little bit quicker, because when you're waiting on that sort of information, it's really tough to know that you just need to keep waiting a few more days or another week. And eventually we got that information back, and it was completely clear. Nothing showed up in Zara's genetic test. So that was a huge relief for us. But it was also really confusing because it just didn't make sense to us. And we went back to see Professor Coman a little bit after that, and Zara had grown and changed a little bit in that time. And this time when he saw her, he told us that, he thinks she has PKS, Pallister Killian Syndrome. And that's not something I had come across in my research prior to then. And it was, a really grounding moment when he explained what that would mean, and just the level of disability and medical complications that means for children, and the varied life expectancy. And the reason that it hadn't previously shown up in either our MNIO or Zara's genetic testing is that it's a mosaic condition, so it doesn't occur in all of the cells, so it can be very hard to detect. And sometimes it is detected in an MNIO, and sometimes it is detected in the genetic blood test. Sometimes it is detected then in a buccal swab from inside the cheek. But for Zara, it wasn't detected in that, and we had to continue to do more testing. But it's extremely hard to pick up, and there's only 25 children in Australia who are diagnosed with PKS and around 500 around the world. So it is extremely rare, and what it means, it's very different for every child really, but there's a big spectrum of medical and developmental challenges, and we had to face the prospect that Zara probably would never be able to walk or talk or eat on her own. And it really turns your world upside down when you find these things out about your child, who, of course, you only had hopes and dreams for the best, most comfortable and joyous life for them that they deserve, just like every other child. So the treatment that Zara had to endure during her short time was a lot. There was a lot of intervention, a lot of casting on her little legs and hearing tests and hearing aids. She was severely deaf in both of her ears. So it was a lot, and we went to Queensland Children's Hospital every week for the first sort of 3 to 4 months. We were travelling down there for 1 or 2 nights to go through all of these processes that we needed to. And I guess each time we found out a little bit more, we would research and know what the treatment path was for that. But then when we did get the diagnosis finally, that sort of gave us some answers, I suppose, and it was something to start to come to terms with and eventually, come to acceptance of and just surrender to that and realise that this is okay, and Zara has come to us for a reason, and we would not have ever wished that to be her life, but it's just an adjustment, and I think it's all about perspective and perception, and I'm really grateful that has helped change my perception on so many different things, and just the way I see life and the values that I try to live by now. There's so many families who are walking a tough road with their children, and it's a new normal, and I didn't like hearing that word when we were going through everything with Zara and trying to find answers or what her future would be, or our future as a family, and people who had been there and experienced it and gone through that journey and had been able to come out the other side. They're the people who I just clung to. Their every word. I would connect with other parents of children with a range of different conditions or disabilities, and I would join support groups for families, particularly there's a PKS group, which is a worldwide group, and once we had that diagnosis, I could find that group and just look at all of these other families and look at the parents and just feel that it will be okay, and seek my comfort and my inspiration from them that this is a path we can walk, and being able to see the different adjustments they made or the treatments or equipment that their children require, and just how they fit in with their family, and not just that, but they are the center of those families, and they just bring so much joy and change so many lives of people around them. And that was the start of my journey to acceptance and surrendering to this path.
It must have been difficult for Theo too, even though he was little, but he had you on your own. He was the only one that you had your focus, and then all of a sudden he has this little sister that requires more attention than a baby that doesn't have any problems. So it must have been difficult for him to adjust to, Kate, was it, in his own little way?
I think so. Yeah, he adjusted really well. But he was just so excited to have a new baby and a little sister. And to him, he didn't see her differences. He could see her different requirements with her casts and her boots and bar and her little hearing aids. He'd help be part of the speech therapy we'd do with her. And yeah, he'd just run up and cuddle her and put her dummy back in, and just he would help us with everything that we needed to do. But I guess it was hard because all of a sudden I wasn't there for just him. There was a bigger demand on my time, and with so much travelling to Brisbane, and he would come with us quite a bit of the time. But fortunately, we also had support at home that we could leave him here sometimes, and my mum would be able to come up from New South Wales and come and do those trips with us too. So he was really part of it, and it, I guess kids are pretty good at adjusting, I think, when they don't know any different. Like, he hadn't had another sibling before. He didn't know what it was like to have a baby where the journey does go smoothly. So for him, I suppose it was normal. And he would, when we were in hospital for 6 weeks in Brisbane, when Zara was 4 months old, he would come down on some weekends, and he had his birthday down there, and we went to the park. So it's just, it's still so important to include those siblings and make sure that you can give them as much love and attention as you possibly can. But ultimately, I do think they adjust and they adapt to the situation as well.
Kate, you mentioned like when Zara was sick and you had to spend 6 weeks in Brisbane with her. It must have been really tough taking her home again after that, living remotely, because you're not close to a hospital and you've left that support network that you had and all those medical specialists. So what was that time like, and how difficult was it for you to leave that safety net of being close to the hospital?
Well, we were flown initially to start that stay. We were flown by the Royal Flying Doctor Service from Miles to Brisbane, and that was because Zara was in severe respiratory distress. So she and Theo started to come down with symptoms of a cold, and for a healthy child like Theo, he will have a cold for a few days or a week, and it'll impact him a little bit, but he'll ultimately get over it. And for Zara, it just is not the case. She deteriorated really quickly overnight. So I took her to the Miles Hospital the next day, and she was on oxygen, and the Royal Flying Doctor Service came and picked us up, and I flew down with her, and I could have never imagined that we would be there for 6 weeks. So she took a long time to recover from that, and she was on high flow oxygen down there for a long time. And they also did some further testing and sleep studies with her. So fortunately, we had just received that diagnosis of Pallister Killian Syndrome. So at least we had a name and something that we can talk to the team about, because there are a lot of children and babies who don't have a diagnosis, and they never do get one. So that's a really tough thing to go through, because you really don't have much information about what the future might hold. So during that time, they did a sleep study with Zara, and they found that she had severe obstructive sleep apnea. So she would stop breathing 12 times every hour. So that prompted us to, they advised that she needs to be on oxygen 24/7 when we came home. So that was something to adjust to for us, and organising the delivery of the oxygen bottles out here. And they also found that they did a swallow study, and they found that she was silently aspirating her milk when she fed into her lungs. So although we'd been using a special cleft teat and bottle that helped her to feed, from that point it was just only going to be the nasal gastric tube. So they taught me how to reinsert that and to use the pump. Unfortunately, it does come out sometimes, and it's a really tough thing it's not a pleasant thing for the baby to go through. And as a mother, it is a tough thing to be putting this tube up your child's nose and down into their tummy and knowing that it's in the right place and aspirating it, that you haven't put it somewhere wrong. So yeah, when we came home, it was with those two additions, I guess, to life. And throughout that whole time, it was a realignment of expectations all the time, because we thought we were there for a week, or after 2 weeks we thought we'd be going home soon, and all indications were going well with how Zara was recovering. And each time the doctors would do their rounds every day, you'd think, okay, they're going to confirm that we can go home, on Monday or on Friday. And every time it just kept being stretched out more and more. So we didn't know, really how long we had to just keep doing that and showing up day after day and spending the day and the night in the hospital, and all of the medical teams that would come in and the therapists. And it's just so far removed from what life should be like with a little baby, And when we were eventually able to be discharged, we were able to stay a couple of nights in a suite in the hospital that would be us, or me. My mum was with me at that time, but us looking after Zara independently and with her oxygen and her NG tube feeding, without the support of the nurses. And that gave us that time to do that, but in the environment that we could get support or help if we needed it. And I was quite confident with everything, and then we were able to go home finally, which was, the start of the most special time that we had with Zara.
Mm-hmm. So, Kate, you only had Zara for just 7 months, which is not very long, but for you it must have seemed like time stood still. And I just can't imagine. And it was a shock to you when she did pass away, wasn't it? Because you weren't expecting it to happen so soon.
Yeah. So when we came home, it was amazing, because a lot of the intensity of all of Zara's appointments had slowed down, and we were just doing therapy, like speech therapy and physiotherapy via Zoom, and we're going to start going back to Toowoomba for appointments as well. But that was all impacted by COVID also. So we were able to do telehealth, and it was just so nice not to have to think about packing to go to Brisbane, every week and everything that involved. And although we had the oxygen and the NG tube, it was the best time that we had with Zara, because we were just together as a family at home and on the farm, and she could just, she had been in a hospital room for 6 weeks. She hadn't been out of that building. And so she could just enjoy the garden so much. She just loved the breeze and watching the leaves, and she would just sit out there with us and spend time with Theo, and we'd go on the trampoline. And Justin actually took her a few times just doing little jobs around the farm. And it was amazing. And I just thought, it's in that time that my heart had really softened, and I had just surrendered, and I could see Zara for exactly who she was, and I just appreciated and embraced that, and just softly and slowly but surely acknowledging and accepting that there are a lot of unknowns yet to come, but this is our life. And I was thinking about the different adjustments we would make, or, was potentially a real possibility that we might have to relocate somewhere closer to medical care. There weren't any indications at that stage that it was something we needed to consider in the short term, but it was something that was at the back of my mind. And even things, thinking about, our little school here in Condamine, thinking about how accessible is that for her if she's in a wheelchair, and, different things like that, and thinking about the support network and care that we would be able to bring into our lives to help with Zara and to help us continue to be able to do the things we need to do in our lives too, but just be able to try to give her the best life that we could. And then, it wasn't too long after that she went into respiratory distress at home again, even though she was on the oxygen full time. And I took her into Miles Hospital again. And this time the flying doctor came really, really quickly and took us down to Brisbane again. And I was preparing for another long stay. I quickly packed as much as I could before we went in and sort of thought in the back of my mind about arrangements or logistics or, what had to be taken care of, knowing that I would probably be away again for a while. It was just the next day that Zara passed away. So she was on the highest level of support that was available to her, and her little body just couldn't cope. She couldn't handle it. And so tough to see her in so much pain and distress and just struggling so much. So, when she did leave us, she was the most serene that she could be. Like, I just knew that she was at peace and she didn't have to struggle anymore with these things on earth. So I know that she's safe now.
Mm. And Kate, what a beautiful gift you gave her, because you took her outside, didn't you? And you were all with her. And I kind of picture that, it's almost a little bit like going away on a holiday, or changing where you live, I suppose, and you have the beautiful people that love you and care for you on one side of the door, and you open that door, and then there's other people on the other side that will love you and care for you.
Yeah, anyway. That's right. And we know that, as you said, we were able to go outside at the hospital, and Justin and Theo came down that morning as quickly as they could, because what the doctors were telling me, like it was becoming very clear to us that was the day that we were going to say goodbye to her. And we did the beautiful things in our final time with Zara, like taking her little hand and footprints and being with her. And when she did pass away, Justin and Theo were able to be right there with us, and she died in my arms, and I'll never forget that, and just how serene and beautiful she looked when she let go, and I knew that she was at peace. So we were able to get her christened as well by a chaplain at the hospital before she passed away. And I know that she's been really looked after really well. Justin's mum passed away 13 years ago now, so she never had any grandchildren while she was alive. So she's got Zara now, and my beautiful grandmother's up there too. And I will see her again one day. It's hard because every day is another day without her, but it's a day closer to being with her again. And I know she's with us in spirit.
Kate, you talk a lot about surrender, and I love you have such a beautiful calmness about you, even within that sadness. But what gifts did Zara bring to your family?
There are so many, Kelly, and she just completely altered the way that we see life and the way that we go about our lives, or try to go about our lives. Absolutely empathy, like just having your eyes open to the different turns that life can take, and the fact that, there are a lot of people out there who are going through all different things, and it's I think it's a beautiful thing when you can become much more aware of that and in touch and compassionate, so that, you know, you can help make a positive difference in other people's lives. And absolutely gratitude for everything we have in our lives that maybe before you didn't notice so much, and definitely a change of perception and knowing that, you know, I've always been a bit of a perfectionist, and I like organisation, and we've always worked towards goals, and we've been able to, you know, grow our business a lot because of that. But Zara showed us that, you know, while perfection is good, like imperfection is actually better. And that was an amazing thing to learn, just as we learn acceptance and just the unconditional love for Zara. So I think that, well, I hope that we are, you know, more empathetic and more tolerant and accepting and gracious in this life, I suppose, because of Zara. And I know for me that it's helped me become more spiritual and be more in tune with myself and just be more comfortable in myself than I ever have been. And these lessons are sometimes things that, you know, you may never get to learn, but for some people it can take a lifetime to have the experiences that teach you these things. And it's just incredible. Although it's been so tough, it's incredible that we've been able to be given these things at this early stage in our lives. And we do so many things to remember Zara, and just special little things, and talk to Theo about her a lot. And we're building a garden for her at the moment, Zara's garden, and it's just, going to be a beautiful, peaceful spot. And there's actually a rose that has been officially named Zara Hillary that one of my friends organised. So that's amazing, and lots of people have been ordering them so they can have their own little memory of Zara. We planted one in our garden on her birthday this year. We had a beautiful ceremony on what would have been her first birthday. And I think, just those special little things, like everyone goes through grief differently and handles things in their own way. But for me, it's been, initially devastating and heart-wrenching, but I could never have imagined in those early stages that it would soften and it would just become part of me and become something that I can manage, and that it wouldn't control me, but it would just be part of who I am now. And sometimes, life gets busy and you've just got to do what you've got to do. But there are times when I do feel like I just need to consciously reconnect with Zara and all of those feelings, because it really is such a meaningful and beautiful thing to try to stay connected with those things, because it's easy to slip back into old habits or old ways of thinking when you are not in those initial depths of grief and the magnitude of those feelings. So I guess for me it's a path of trying to become okay again, but living with that and just holding that gently inside of me, and always remembering Zara and just carrying her memory as I continue to go ahead in my life and do other things. And it is a hard balance to achieve, as I think anyone who has lost a baby, either through miscarriage or stillbirth or as an infant, because it really just, it tears at your heart as a mother, and it's hard to make sense of why this has happened to you, or because it's happened to you, what you're meant to do with that now and how you're meant to carry on. So it's a journey, that's for sure.
Kate, I'm astonished that so soon after Zara passed, that you were able to organise Zara's Day and raised so much money for the Royal Flying Doctor Service and the Steve Waugh Foundation. And I'm in awe that you were able to do that. And I'd like to delve into that a little bit further in a minute. But tell me how important the RFDS were for you during that time, and also how the Steve Waugh Foundation supported you, because I had never even heard of the Steve Waugh Foundation until I, knew about Zara. So, yeah.
It's just started raining here, so I hope you can still hear me okay.
That's good.
Yeah, so in the first few days after Zara passed away, and we were trying to adjust to that surreal feeling and just that devastation and realisation that this has happened and we have lost her, we were thinking about ways that we could do something more in addition to Zara's funeral. And that's when I actually hadn't heard of the Steve Waugh Foundation before that either, but that's when I started researching, okay, what organisations are there that support children with rare diseases that we can help in Zara's memory. And that's when I came across the Steve Waugh Foundation, and combined with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, they were our two charities for Zara's Day. And the RFDS were critical in our journey with Zara. They flew us to Brisbane twice from Miles, and both of those situations were quite critical. The Miles Hospital wasn't fully equipped to be able to provide the level of support Zara needed, and one of those aspects was high flow oxygen. They just had low flow. So through an idea that a friend suggested to me who's a nurse, we also decided that we would purchase 2 high flow oxygen facilities for Miles Hospital from Zara's Day fundraising. So it's amazing to know that is there now for the benefit of the whole community and anyone of any age who might happen to need that. So the foundation we hadn't sought the support of the foundation yet with Zara. We were on the NDIS, which is a great scheme, and that helped, with her therapy and different equipment that we need. And we were on the path to develop more of a plan for that and be able to secure more items that we needed. But there is a limitation to what they will cover, and that's where the Steve Waugh Foundation is able to provide grants to families and children with rare disease that can help them seek additional life-changing therapy and equipment and assistive communication technologies and just devices and items that help enhance their quality of life and enhance their lives as a family and the accessibility around their homes and those sort of things. So it's already such a tough road. So it's incredible to know that the foundation does all of this amazing work to make life just a little bit easier for these people who, already have a lot of challenges.
And so $150,000 you raised that afternoon?
Yes, we did.
We all get emotional over so many things, and this is so emotional, Kate. But the thing that gets me is the generosity of people and the kindness of people when you're in the depths of despair. Just that beautiful outpouring of love and giving, that just really touches me, I think, more than anything in so many ways, because you see the power of love, I guess, and what it does, and just what you've done, raising all that money and how that will help someone going through things that you've been through. And I just think, to be able to do that is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And although we're essentially behind it all, it really comes down to the support of everyone around us and the people and businesses who donated items for Zara's Day, the members of our community who just, showed us incredible support and spirit beyond what we could have expected. There were over 200 people who came to Zara's Day, and combined with the fundraising events on the day and a GoFundMe page, which allowed anyone from anywhere to contribute as well. There was also an online Instagram auction that was held by Wattle and Twine, and that contributed an amount towards the total as well. So yeah, you definitely see the love and the kindness and just that willingness to step up and support you to do this and to make a difference. And we're so grateful for that. And I think that, you know, people who do this, they know that giving is receiving. And that's something that I've been able to learn through all of this as well.
And I guess to accept that into your own life as well, that to accept someone giving you something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kate, you have the raffle going at the moment. So that's supporting the Royal Flying Doctor Service. And then the online auction, it starts on the 29th of November, is that right, for the Steve Waugh Foundation?
October, yeah. So the reason we're holding these things at the moment is because we're approaching Zara's 1-year anniversary of her death on the 2nd of November. So we have opened the online raffle, which is for the Royal Flying Doctor Service Queensland section. It opened on the 14th of October and it will stay open until the 14th of November. So there's plenty of time for people to get their raffle tickets, although they are selling really quickly. We have a goal to raise $50,000 and we have sold 1,000 tickets already of the available 5,000 tickets. So there's an amazing amount of prizes on offer. There's 44 prizes and their total value of $10,000. So businesses have been so supportive of that. And then we have the online auction, which is for the Steve Waugh Foundation, and it opens on the 29th of October and it will close on the 7th of November. And we have over $47,000 worth of auction items in that. So they can be bought by anyone across Australia. There's lots of beautiful art and accommodation. There's rural and outdoors products. There's lots of things for mums and little ones. Yeah, it's just an incredible offering that's, really something for everyone. So we are, very grateful for everyone's support who is buying raffle tickets and who is able to bid in the auction. And, hopefully we can make an incredible difference again this year.
So people just go to the Zara's Day website, is that right?
Yeah, so everything is linked on the website. They can find everything they need to access there. So the website is zarasday.com.au. And I also put up a lot on Facebook and Instagram. So we're just under Zara's Day on both of them. And I'd be so appreciative of anyone who'd like to follow us and keep up to date with everything we're doing.
Well, Kate, thank you so much. And I'll be interested to hear how much you raise again this year. And I'm very grateful for you taking the time to chat with me. And it's been such a privilege. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Kelly. It's been lovely to chat.
Thanks so much for watching our video. I hope you enjoyed it. And please try to remember to just click on the subscribe button so we can keep you updated with everything that's happening. Thank you.